everyone, my name is Rexy, and welcome to this leg of the Pokemon Maralocke, covering the first half of Generation 7. The Maralocke has a Nuzlocke of the 32 mainline games in release order. The standard Nuzlocke rules are at play, plus no overleveling past the gym leader's ace, and the species I use in the Hall of Fame can't be used again. That means I can't use anything that's got into the Hall of Fame from Generations 1 to 6. Check out the playlist to see where everything stands so far. Alola also has a large regional Pokédex, and I had an equally beefy 98 final evolutions to work with. Again, this doesn't include legendaries, but split evolutions are allowed. Pokemon and Me is back in this game, but under a more care-friendly renovation as was Pokemon Refresh. And while I could still use it to raise a Sylveon, I chose not to use it for these two games. This is also the first region to introduce regional forms of pre-existing species. I decided to treat them as one individual line, so Alolan, Diglett, Raichu, and Marowak are completely off the cards for me. Similarly, I didn't opt for any exclusives to Island Scan. Simply put, if it didn't have an Alolan Pokédex number, I wouldn't use it. With the most areas to get encounters in so far, I'd end up with a huge army to rotate in and out when needed, and having heard all the horror stories behind people doing Nuzlocks in these games, I was ready to take them head on. Additionally, I play with a soft dupes clause. If I have its Pokédex entry, I don't catch it. But that does mean catching more than one of an evolutionary line. Let's go and check out Pokemon Sun and Moon. These two games are infamous for one reason: all the story and cutscenes getting in the way. That said, this generation introduced Z-Crystals and Z-Moves, as well as regional forms to give a twist to prior species. And in a bigger twist still, there are no Pokemon gyms in the Alola region, meaning the level caps had to be placed elsewhere. On top of that, all important boss fights in this game have 3 or more max IVs and are competitively EV trained. And I was not in for an easy ride at all. In the space of 15 minutes, no fooling, I met Professor Kukui while setting into home number 8 on Melee Island, and he encouraged me to get a housewarming gift over at Tiki Town. It was also nearby that I met this Lily girl in a starry cloud bowl that she named Nebby, and some static-covered tribal monster saved all of us when fending off against a Lord of Spearow, as well as giving me a funny-looking stone. I know I've had my track record of collecting fancy rocks on these runs, but that just couldn't wait until I got my Pokédex this time. Back in the town itself, the island's Kahuna Hala showed up with the 3-starter Pokemon and encouraged me to befriend one and take it on an adventure, like I had been doing for the past 6 generations now. Both games picked a different starter, with Sun going for Rowlet and Moon opting for Popplio, respectively naming them Merida and Lucas. Kukui also gave me a Pokédex and trainer passport, and I engaged Hala's grandson How in our battling debut. The next day, Kukui met me before the town's big festival and taught me how to catch a Pokemon. With that, I could finally befriend the infinitely superior local animals of this region as well. On Route 1 proper, the teams took on the Pipikek duo Woody and Falco. I also met a Pichu nearby, which meant early issues for Moon, but the duo still had enough strength to pull through. And at the conclusion of the festival, Hala gave back the funny stone I got earlier, having turned it into a magical bracelet called a Z-Ring. The following night, Lily encouraged me to meet the professor again at the Howley outskirts, so I went through the grass there to get to him. It was there that the Wingull duo Cruz and Melia joined our ranks. Great! Moon now has a water type, a flying type, and a dual water flying type. At Kukui's lab, he woke up a sleeping Rotom inside my Pokédex and turned it into Omochao in the space of 5 seconds. Where's the mute button on this thing? Then he took me over to the trainer school to teach me some battling basics, as well as giving me the EXP share before going further in. This thing operates exactly like it did in Generation 6. All active Pokemon get to the full amount of experience in battle anyway, but when this thing is on, all inactive battlers receive half of the same amounts. It's a permanent feature in Generation 8, and I still want to get used to it. Here in the grass, Sun met Boo the Grammar, while Moon took on a shady-looking Meowth and named him Ganondorf. And after one last lesson from the teacher, I gained access to Howley City. The grass patches was where Sun met Evelyn the Meowth, and Moon took on Polar the Young Goose right at the break of morning. At the City Marina is where the groups made their first encounter with Team Skull. If last generation's team player absolutely went to high school, these ruffians flat out didn't bother. After taking care of them in battle, the local trial captain Alima wanted to see if I was ready to progress further. His Smeargle has an attack move that's super effective against your starter, but it still has the special attack of a Canopy, so that shouldn't matter. Up north at Route 2, the gang meets the Makihito duo Mr. Incredible and Little Mac. Then after the Howley Cemetery, the Drifloon duo Hard Scrabble and Kumatora joined the initial roster of 7. And before going any further, the squads kept playing chase with their little cats, and before we knew it, Evelyn and Ganondorf evolved into a Persian pair via friendship. Instead of gym challenges, the level caps are all separated with island trials. 7 that culminate with a totem fight, and 4 that are simply battles against the island's Kahuna. Elima led a normal type trial at Verdant Cavern, requiring me to chase out some rodents to lure out the totem. By the time we reached the boss site, only the Persian duo were able to fight at the cap, and Sun wasn't at all expecting that revelation. The totem in Sun is a gumshoes, meaning it was luckily able to take a hit from dark type moves. Evelyn went through with bite spam, in which 5 of them got to use to take out that bulky thing. And luckily for her, Super Fang missed twice, so it took a little longer before I had to potion heal mid-fights to keep her out of crit range from the young Goose Alley, which is strange because her ability is Fur Coat and she was meant to be more durable. Once that went down, the young Goose Alley followed with a further 2 bites. Yeah, you can tell I was a rookie at running through a Lola when I could have given her the Silk Scarf and ran Swift on them instead. And that was exactly what Moon did against the Totem Reticate, which is part Dark type and so the same strategy in Sun couldn't apply. And because of Ganondorf's Technician ability, the Reticate and its allies got the equivalent of a non-stop surf in terms of attack power. He also took 3 tackle attacks with the Totem, and as the ally Rattata was unable to land the hits thanks to Hustle, no healing was needed at all. Instead of receiving badges for clearing trials, I would obtain the corresponding Z Crystal instead. And once I gave one to a member of my team, they'd end up pulling off powerful Z moves in battle if they already knew a move of that type. When leaving the cave, Sun caught Iandor the Zubat, while Moon grabs Ninjara the Rattata. Back outside, Professor Kukui was nearby and told me that Lily and Nebby had wandered off somewhere, so it was up to me to track them down. That's meant going through Route 3, where Moon caught a cutie fly and named her Nabby, and the Pipikek duo became a Trumbeak duo after some quick battles. At Millie Meadow, Lily was too frightened to wander through a field of flowers to grab Nebby on the other side, so I volunteered to do so. And when going through there, Sun also caught a cutie fly and named him Flick, while Moon took on Kirby the Oikorio. And inside the nearby Seaward Cave, Moon also caught Ridley the Zubat. After another encounter with How and stomping his duo in battle, the squad reached Iki Town, where Hollow awaited me for his grand trial, and with a trio of fighting types at his disposal. Woody led for Sun and stepped up against his Mankey. It opened with Focus Energy, meaning on the next attacking turn it had, Karate Chop ran a crit! Thankfully, Peck was a 2-HK KO after Hala's potion heal, so that didn't matter. Hard Scrabble went out against the Makihita, and Hala immediately switched it out for Crabrawler. Pursuit hit for over a third, but again that meant nothing because Gus was also a 2-shot. All that the Makihita could do was spam Sand Attack, but sure enough, 3 Gus attacks connected and blew it away. For Moon, Navi resisted 2 pursuit attacks from the Mankey, while also running through with a Fairy with 2 shots. And as predicted, the Makihita did like Kumatora and switched out immediately to Crabrawler. But even with the sharp beak equipped, Gus was a 3-shot this time and she had to hold back a pursuit that took out half of her health. But once that was down, she was free to use the same attack on the helpless Makihita that could only reduce her accuracy. In addition to the Fighting Z Crystal, I also got this device called a Right Pager, which I could use to summon wild Pokemon to escort me with their own individual talents. This thing also opened up SOS battles, the biggest pain in these games. Summoning an ally in battle and preventing capture until one of them gets defeated, effectively turning simple encounters into mini-bosses on a whim. At 10 Carat Hill, Sun and Moon pulled through and caused the Carbink duo Arlo and Rain. Moon also reached the farthest hollow, where Donkey Kong and Machop also joined rotation. And while hanging around here, the starters reached their next respective forms as Dartrix and Brion. I moved along to Akala Island, and a rickety old boat that Kukui had cared for, and met Olivia on arrival, and I had to beat 3 more trials before engaging her in battle. Route 4 was the meeting place of the Mudbray duo Jessie and Samus, and Paniola Town was simply a meeting place of How and another Curb Stomp battle. Sun then met Bullseye the Tauros at Paniola Ranch, then joined Moon at Route 5 where getting the Fomantis pair Barley and Midmin. This route was where they also met some angsty Team Skull kid named Gladion, and his beefy type Null can be a major obstacle if you don't have anything tanky enough for its, well, 2-slot moveset. Who thought that was a good idea again? Then at Buckland Hill, the gangs took on the Morlul pair Joe Gardner and Olimar. This is also the location of the Water-type trial, and after Lana added Lapras to the Right Pager for reaching some rabbit fish, Moon instead returned to Millie for some encounters at some previously blocked locations. Kala'e Bay is one of the locations where I could catch a Bagon, and finally having a Salamence on my side would give me so much of an edge. But Moon ran into a Slowpoke. I guess Impa would be decent enough for the trial ahead. So would Kraid, the Tentacool course of the Hollowy beachfronts. And during nighttime hours, Ninjara reached his next form as Eradicate. Eventually, the fish gathered at the bottom of Buckland Hill and gathered to form the Totem Wishy-Washy, with Rain also boosting its water-type attacks. Bullseye opened for Sun and let his Horn attack power up Breakneck Blitz, taking out a third of its health in one swoop. But immediately on the following turn, it summoned an Alomomola as an ally. Not what I wanted, as it has Heal Pulse and can replenish its ally's health. I changed Bullseye's attack strategy to Horn attack on the Alomomola, and Growl from it kept on bringing its attack down. And Sock also was a thing, meaning their attack started getting resisted. Once in kill range, I swapped in Joe, tanking the same double slaps and water guns. One Mega Drain was enough to finish off the Alomomola. And thankfully for us, the next ally boss onto the field was a tiny Wishy-Washy, which meant no threat to us other than usage of Helping Hand. More Mega Drain use resulted in the Totem using its Citrus Berry, dragging this on for longer than it should. Once in range of the crit, Joe got swapped in for Merida. She held back a Fate attack and water gun on the switch in, then went for Razor Leaf. Amusingly, it missed a tiny Wishy-Washy, but landed a KO on the Totem, with a follow-up Razor Leaf bringing down that small fight too. In Moon, Ninjara also opened with a Breakneck Blitz, albeit with Hyper Fang powering it this time. Of course, that's prompted that stupid healing Alomomola again. Unfortunately for me, Hyper Fang missed and their attacks pushed him into kill range, so I had to switch. Olimar went next and got hit with a Soak, but Mega Drain still worked well thanks to the Expert Belt boost, and that ran a 3-shot on the Alomomola. It did, however, use Heal Pulse on the Totem, bringing it up to full health. Its bulk was too much for him to get any more Mega Drain heals in, so in came another switch. Min immediately got hit with a Helping Hand boosted water gun and would immediately die if she tried to attack. Kraid went in with a bigger resistance, then went in to spam acid on both targets. That took out the tiny Wishy-Washy in 3 turns and forced the Totem to eat his Citrus Berry, but he was left on red HP by the end and swapped out again. Lucas arrived and started chipping away with Disarming Voice. While this was happening, the Totem started using Growl for some reason, even though Disarming Voice is a special move. Fantastic for us because Lucas locked it in with Encore, meaning no attacks refuted, as this non-stab fairy type move ran it to the ground. The Encore ended just before the Totem would use Schooling no more, meaning he got the kill like a proud aquatic puppy. In addition to the Water Z Crystal, Lana also gave me a fishing rod, meaning I could go hook up an encounter from below the waves. Before going that far, Moon went to the Pokemon Nursery back at Peniola Ranch and picked up an egg from a worker there. Once again, eggs are my encounter for where they're received and not where they're hatched. Further along, Sun met Julia the Grubbin on Route 6, the squads helped some wandering Hapu girl protect a lone Drifloon from Team Skull, and the professor pretended to be a pro wrestler during an impromptu battle royale. Once at Route 7, Sun used the fishing rod and hooked up a Wishy-Washy that's got named Nemo, and once he got brought up to level 20, he was able to summon the rest of his school to back him up on the battlefield. The Zubat pair also evolved into a Golbat before the next trial, but neither team needed them. Kiawe's fire trial at Weller Volcano Park had a string of spot the difference puzzles with his dance troupe, with correct dances leading to side battles that I let the Carbig pair deal with. I hatched the Mudbray pair up in front for one reason, the Totem Salazzle. However, both were equipped with the Soft Sand, its main attack of Flame Burst would never kill anyway, and a single bulldoze swept aside that slippery scaled soul. The next location was Route 8, with a gang called the Flachinder pair Coco and Captain Falcon. However, when fighting trainers, Sun faced a Fearow that was set to run havoc with the Flying Z move Supersonic Sky Strike. Unfortunately, someone had to get sacrificed so that everyone else could live, and that job fell on Flick. If it's of any consolation, Hopper is next. Some evolutions also happened here, with Julie becoming a Charjabug, Olimar evolving into a Shinotic, the Makihita duo becoming a Hariyama duo, and the Golbat pair reaching their final form as a Crobat. Then it was time for the Grass Trial of Slush Jungle, where Captain Mallow guided me to become the next big cooking sensation. Her unusual choice of ingredients drew a scent that lured over a giant Totem Lurantis, and it actually required a brain to figure out a plan. Ian Dore had a Scorpions to boost his crit chances with Cross Poison, but it didn't happen. After one move, Lurantis summoned a cast form, which could turn the tide against us if it set up Sunny Day. So Ian Dore went to attack that instead, again, no crit, and took it down in 3 turns. Then it summoned the Trumbeak, which was also scary because it had Rock Blast, a move that I didn't want to send Coco into a line of fire for. But I ignored it, allowed Iandor to keep fighting the Lurantis, and all while dodging 2 Supersonics from the Trumbeak. Finally, a crit Cross Poison happened, and that meant his Synthesis heal stalling was no more. The Totem was down, but we still had the problem of the Trumbeak, and Iandor at 8 HP was not going to cut it. To save my defenses against Rock Blast, I brought in Boo as the most expendable member of my team. She got confused with Supersonic, but balanced it with the Poison chance from Poison Fang. And then, 2 turns in a row, she then pushed herself in the face, with that second punch being the end of her. Not the most honorable way to lose a teammate, but yeah. Woody swept in and finished his brethren off with a pluck, but I would have wanted him to pluck me for making a poor decision. Moon opted to not let Ridley hold anything. His acrobatics brought itself past half, and then it immediately brought out the cast form and its ability to set up the sun. He focused on that one with an acrobatics 2-shot while the Totem continued to heal under the bright sunlight. The Totem then brought out the Trumbeak next, and after one turn of acrobatics, it then hit Ridley with Supersonic. I was not prepared to lose any teammate to Confusion hacks again. And Buzzy Kirby, he held back Pluck and Razor Leaf attacks on both, then struck them with an air cutter, nearly the kill on the Trumbeak. The sun then faded away, meaning no more weather boost for Synthesis. Ridley then returned to the playing field, and with a few more uses of acrobatics, Moon got through the trial with no casualties. Before moving on ahead, both teams stuck around to get to the encounter inside the jungle. Sun picked up a Comfey named her Joy, and Moon called Zelda the Mouseweet, who evolved into a Steenie on the way down south. At Here City, I met Kukui's wife, Professor Burnett, who confirmed the existence of the multiverse for her studies and how it's not just confined to American comics. The squads also witnessed the conservation efforts of the Aether Foundation at Diglett Tunnel, then continued southeast to meet Olivia. Memorial Hill was where the Phantom duo 22 and Miffer got caught, and immediately Trade evolved into a Trevenant duo, and Joe also evolved into a Shinotic. The squads also bumped into Team Skull's lead caretaker Plumeria, and she too learned that I ain't got the time to deal with nobodies. But a nobody, Olivia, was not, and she awaited me with a Rock-type team. Joe went up against the Nose Passer Sun and took out a good chunk of itself with Grass Knot, but got paralyzed with Thunder Wave. It attacked with Rock Slide next, and lucky for us, the second one missed and he landed that second Grass Knot. Nemo went in for the Bulldor and summoned his Skull to 2 shots with Scald, holding back a headbutt in the process and seeing Olivia waste a potion to no avail. Then there was Mr. Incredible against her Lysanrock. He fought first with Fake Out, then they exchanged Z moves. His own Continental Crush got a crit, but he endured it and crashed down with his own all-out pummeling. For Moon, Samus ran a Bulldoze 2-shot on a Nose Pass while also holding back a soft Rock Slide. Olimar resisted a headbutt while going in for a Mega Drain 2-shot to the Bulldor, and Little Mac dodged a Rock Throw from the Lysanrock before going in with a kill with all-out pummeling. After the fight, I got access to Hanno Grand Resort, where Moon met Mother Brain the Sandygast on the beach. The squads also got escorted by Goat. By Goat? What? A goat? The squads also got escorted by boat to Aether Paradise, a huge conservation project in the middle of the sea. Overseeing everything was the President Lucamine, and her outlook to Pokemon care is very clingy in nature. A wormhole also opened up here and summoned some strange outer space jellyfish, but the Mudboy duo had no issues with turning them into jelly beans. Once the tour was over, the next stop was Ula Ula Island. Upon touchdown at Malier City, Hao immediately wanted me to fight, and despite his start of matching the level cap, I found my ways to counter his growing gang. While battling traders at Malier Garden, Moon faced 2 evolutions. Zelda learned Stomp and evolved into Serena, while Donkey Kong became a Machoke and then a Machamp via trade. We told Professor Kukui about the strange holdback at Aether, bumped into Hapu on her island tour, and met Trial Captain Acerola at the library, who helps Lily with her research of the local legendaries. Once able to leave town, the squads continued to get more encounters. Route 10 was home to the Pancham duo Sully and Pyra. Moon also added to the team with Adeline the Komala on Route 11, then hoped to get a Magnemite at the Malier outskirts, but ended up with Crystal the Grimer. Thanks, game. Magnezone is meant to be good in this region too! Mount Hokulani is the location of the next trial, but before going further, Kukui showed me the site of the Pokemon League he wanted to establish over at Mount Lanakila, like the battle-hungry buff that he is. The local tech support man Mullane was also here and challenged me to a battle before gaining access to the next trial inside the observatory, and I had more than enough coverage to deal with a team of steel types. Moon also went for an encounter down the mountain, which turned out to be a freaking Beldum! Since this thing could only attack with Takedown and later Struggle, both of which able to deal recoil, I needed Adeline to keep putting it to sleep and preventing it from hurting itself. Ultimately, this thing got caught and named Link, and immediately evolved into a Metang before joining the front lines. Back at the observatory, Sophocles attempted to lure the Totem with the power of science, but forgot that the kettle was running and blew up the circus. The only way to escape was to participate in an audio quiz in the dark and send the Carpink gang to fight any bugs that stumble in. But one of them was the boss of his electric trial, Totem Vikavolt, and both gangs had a different solution for squishing this thing. Sun led with Bullseye. He opened with a Rock Tomb-powered Continental Crush, which took out nearly half of its health. The Totem reacted with a Spark and calling out a Chargebug ally, which I was a little nervous about, and then got more so when after a successful Rock Tomb, Vikavolt chose to charge on the second turn and Chargebug paralyzed with Thunder Wave. And yet, the following Rock Tomb landed a crit and took out the totem. Only the one charge bug was left, so I let Jessie deal with that one, opting for 2 Rock Tomb attacks and a stomp. Moon's solution was Donkey Kong, who was pre-poisoned to activate Guts. And as seen in past legs, that ability is extremely helpful in a pinch. That meant a non-stop 180 base power Continental Crush brought the totem barely into the red, which in turn hit back with Spark and took out half of its health. And then risked it on the second turn, and a great one it was! DK's second Rock Tomb knocked it out. The Chargebug ally Spark and poison damage brought him down to the red, so out he went. Samus defused Spark on the switch in and held back a soft bite, then landed a Rock Tomb 2 HKO of her own. Back down the mountain, the squad bumped into Guzma, the leader of Team Skull. He threatened us into a battle, but being fresh out of dealing with a bigger bug problem, they got flicked away with no issues. And by the time the battle was over, the Mudbraid duo had reached their next forms as a Mudsdale duo. Once down, Route 12 was open, where Hapu gave us the Mudsdale option for the right pager, which allowed us to travel over this rugged path. But why couldn't I do that with the Mews that were already on battle rotation? Sun also met Buzz the Elekid here, then at Splush Mountain, the same squad took on Eleanor the Turtonator, while Moon opted for a Togedemaru that got named Duck Hunt. I met Gladion again on Route 13. He said that Team Skull is looking for a creature that can summon other Pokemon, which is something I'll remember the next time I see a squid from out of nowhere. Around this area, the Pancham duo spent too much time around the Dark-type clique and evolved into a Pangoro duo, Buzz evolved into an Electabuzz via level up, and Sun also met Ellie the Vulpix at the Tapu village. Acerola's ghost trial was at an abandoned supermarket, where the squads went through Baby's first fatal frame and caught some floating spooks inside the Pokédex camera. And all that culminated with the Totem Mimikyu, waiting in the broom closet at the back. Sun led with Arlo, who immediately set up with Reflect. Even without that barrier, Play Rough would have been a 3 HKO without a crit. The Totem summoned a Haunter, and thanks to the barrier, Arlo held on to both a Lick and a Play Rough. One ancient power got used to break its disguise. Bullseye went in and held on against another Play Rough, while also deflecting the Haunter's Nightshade. The following turn, he put the Totem self down to a quarter with Corkscrew Crash. But Haunter put him to sleep with Hypnosis, so in went Eondor to nerf its fallen Sucker Punch and the Totem's Play Rough. On the next turn, he held back a Shadow Claw and finished the Mimikyu off with Acrobatics, only for the Haunter to put him to sleep too! It was safe to bring in Sully to finish it off with a Shadow Claw. Moon stuck with what worked and led with Rain, once again with a Reflect set up into Ancient Power. But after an opening Play Rough on the Mimikyu, it's then used Mimic and learned Reflect from us. And the summoned Haunter Rally also paralyzed with Licks, so we definitely couldn't keep it out. Duck Hunt stepped up, but the Mimikyu set up that Reflect. She was also slower, but Iron Barbs dealt passes damage before she went in with that 160 base power Corkscrew Crash. Yet the Reflect meant Mimikyu's health ended up in the red, and another Shadow Claw would surely kill. Zelda went in and held back more attacks, but when she was due to attack with Acrobatics, the Haunter went to put her to sleep with Hypnosis as well. Samus went in and didn't need to Reflect for defensive boosts thanks to a stamina ability. She took 4 different attacks like a champ, then finished off the totem with a Rock Tomb. But she was on 19 HP, and I needed someone else for the remaining Haunter. Pyro went in to deal the Shadow Claw finisher, but the Haunter put her to sleep too! Only one teammate was yet to see action, and that was Lucas. I put him in, but he immediately got paralyzed with Lick. But after 2 turns, he broke out of it and landed a Skuldoko. Not so long after leaving, the squads bumped into Plumeria again and saw that Team Skull stole a child's Pokemon, roping me into a rescue mission that no one else volunteered to do. When heading along the west coast, the Flachinta pair evolved into a Talonflame, the starters reached their final forms as the Decidueye and Primarina, and the Graveler that Sun met on Route 17 exploded in front of Bullseye and denied a reserve for the box. The one-man police force that was Nanu gave me a cautionary warning before I went inside the Team Skull strongholds that was Po Town. But what I really should have done was gone inside town with a raincoat on. Further in, Sun also picked up an Ice Stone, which got used to evolve Ellie into a Ninetales, and Crystal evolved into a Muck via level up. The squads met Guzma further in and claimed the stolen Pokemon back after a hard-fought battle. Meanwhile, Plumeria found Lily and Nebby, soon abducting her after a simple exchange of words. That revelation greatly upset Gladion when he found out, so after he took out his anger on a fight against me, he brought me over to the Marie Harbor to put things right. Before leaving, Nanu revealed himself as the island's Kahuna, so I was more than fine with delaying the departure and finding the light through his dark types. Ellie opened for Sun. His Sableye fledged on the first hit with Fake Out, but she pushed it down with Dazzling Gleam while also holding back a Power Gem. Sully went up against the Persian, which has Fur Coat, but his Mold Breaker ability rendered it useless. Sure, he also got hit from a Fake Out and Power Gem, but all out pummeling landed an Orko. Nemo went up against the Krokorok last of all. He got confused from the swagger, but he broke out of it and landed a Scald Oko. For Moon, Lucas held back a fake out and Shadow Ball while dealing with Disarming Voice 2-shot on a Sableye. Zelda got hit with an Intimidate for the Krokorok and resorted to using Magical Leaf as the main choice of attack. If she could break out of confusion thanks to swagger. She did enough work for Nana to use a Hyper Potion at least, but she was slower, a Crunch took out a fair chunk of her health, and she got swapped out when at crit range. Donkey Kong got hit with swagger as well, yet he broke through the confusion and took it out with a wake-up slap. Finally, the Persian. Pyra did great, holding back a fake out of Power Gem, then running an all-out pummeling Oko. And once the battle was done, Gladion revealed our next destination, Aether Paradise. Since the last visit, Aether had turned into a well-guarded prison for Nebby and its powers. How Gladion and myself all fall through the building together, but Mr. Malasada should have gone easier and not used Sparkling Area from his Primarina to almost kill Coco. That would have been stupidly embarrassing if that move landed a crit. Our leads took us to Lucamine's office, where Guzma stepped in the way as her personal bodyguard, and the squads had to fight him for one last time. Sunset bullseye against his threatening Gliscopod, ramming a single Continental Crush to activate emergency exits. That brought up Pizza, who would hit hot with Brick Break, so I switched in Coco to block 2 of those moves and equally rammed through it with 2 uses of acrobatics. Bullseye returned for the Gliscopod, held back a first impression that wouldn't crit kill, then landed 2 Rock Tombs to bury it completely. Arlo's Ancient Power was the 2-shot against the Masquerain, which couldn't do much even with Bug Buzz. And that move was also a 3-shot on the Ariados, with Shadow Sneak and Fell Stinger unable to penetrate the stone shell. Moon's lead of Kirby started well with a Revelation Dance that forced out Gliscopod and an Air/Orc on Ariados, but did take a beefy sucker punch from the latter. Link held back a first impression from the Gliscopod that also wouldn't crit kill, and took up the last of its health with a Zen Headbutt. Sending in Samus against the Masquerain was a bad idea, because I soon realized that she didn't have Rock Tomb and had to do as much as possible with Stomp before switching out. Lucas took a soft Bug Buzz on the Switch and opted to do as much damage as possible with Sparkling Aria, but the second of 2 Air/Slash attacks got the flinch and denied the KO. I then tried pivoting through Samus to get to Kirby, seeing it use Air/Slash and Bug Buzz respectively, and finishing it with a Revelation Dance. Then there was Pizza, and by the state of my team, someone was still bound to go down. Pyra pushed as much as possible with Crunch and even got a defense drop, but Brick Break made it too badly beaten to continue. With regret, I healed Kirby in the back with a Moo Milk, and saw her go down to her next scissor. I'm sorry, Pyra. Not even a distant land. She's gone to a whole different planet. At least that gave room for Kirby to step in and land an Air/Oko, but on his second attempt. With a member down, Moon quickly regrouped and brought Crystal along for the meeting with Lucamine and her cryonically frozen private collection. I've heard of an overbearing mother, but that's definitely not for me. Anyway, she used Nebby's wormhole-busting power to bring that trippy galactic squid back in! And try as we might to pin down her party under Gladion's advice, but she and Guzma escaped and left Nebby as this lifeless shell of a being. We needed help from another Kahuna. And with a quick change from Lily and a magic flute from Gladion, as well as the ever-so-useful Master Ball, the squads moved along to Pony Island, which houses a shrine for the local legendary Pokemon. Moon went gung-ho, but Sun took it easy around the Seafolk village, meeting a gentleman that gave away a load of gifts, including an Electrizer, which could use to trade Evolved Buzz into an Electivire. And when out in the wilderness, Mother Brain evolved into a Palisand while taking on some trainers. We bumped into Harper again, but she said that there isn't a Kahuna in this island, or at least until a few minutes later, where she got the job that her late grandfather once held at a ritual over at the Ruins of Hope. She told us that we needed 2 flutes at the shrine instead of 1, directing us to the second one at Exegitor Island. Moon opted to catch the static tower and palm tree and name her Wii Fit, and he called up to Sun to pick up the opposite flute at the north end. Before we could go deeper into the vast Body Canyon, Hapu challenged us to her first battle as a Kahuna, and with a firm team of ground types, all also above the level cap for the final totem. Sun sent Sully against a Dug Trio that set up a sandstorm, but Mold Breaker meant no effects of its sound availability, and Brick Break was a straight one-shot. The same can be said for Nemo and his special-based Hydro Vortex on the Mudsdale. Ellie was slower than the Flygon and held back an Earth Power, but it then faced an Ice Beam Oko. And finally, Meredith sliced through the Gastrodon with a single Leaf Blade. Moon also faced a Sandvale set up on Dug Trio, but despite this, Captain Falco was able to connect 2 Flame Charge attacks, as well as hold back a Sucker Punch and unnecessary necessarily trigger Flame Body. Zelda went against the Gastrodon, but a single drop kick didn't so-call it, forcing Harper to heal with a Hyper Potion. We didn't need to worry about it, as Muddy Water couldn't even take out half of her health. Donkey Kong was slower than the Flygon, in fact, can say the same for the entire team, and held back a meaty Earth Power before running Dual Chop. It wasn't enough for the kill and he would be dead to a crit, so I then switched into Kirby to nerf Earth Power, hold back a Dragon Breath, and then connect an Ear Slash for the knockouts. Finally, Lucas went against the Mudsdale and wipes the floor with an Oceanic Operetta Oko. Following this, the squads were ready to make the long trek through the canyon, making sure to open every path available. While doing so, Link reached his final evolution as a Metagross. Then Moon returns to Seafolk Village for some quick incubation for the egg from back at the Kala, and Ice Climber the Eevee was born, also getting some level ups in the back. That's name alone's a clue as to what I wanted to evolve him into, but the means to do so weren't immediately available. It was during this dusty trek that I needed to split my rotation into two separate teams. One to deal with the totem, and the other to deal with the next trainer boss, which had a 5-level difference. I had to think about what would be better needed for which fight. That totem was a Komoro, the boss of an ancient dragon-type trial with no owner. And Trials might dream a theory craft, but Ellie can't outspeed in one shot thanks to its one-stage boost across all stats, meaning she will die to a single flash cannon. Sun had to be creative. Buzz led with the light screen setup and paralyzed it with Thunder Wave. The totem's first turn was on the predictable Protect, while on the second turn, a Sky Uppercut appears from that and the Hakamoro ally brought his health down to 2 HP. I bought in Coco. She used acrobatics on one turn and had her health and defense cut from a clanging scales attack. I then tagged in Jessie, and she pushed for as many uses of high horsepower as possible, and thankfully she connected 2 for the kill. All that was left was the Hakamoro. I just let Ellie overkill it with Twinkle Tackle as the ultimate revenge, all while holding back 2 Sky Uppercut attacks. Lucas also couldn't outspeed for Moon, but none of its moves could Oko him, so he took a Sky Uppercut and walloped it with a single Twinkle Tackle. Water and Fairy sounds like a busted combo. At the altar on the other side, Lily and I played Flute Hero together and summoned a beam of light onto the premises, which Nebby consumed and evolved to Solgaleo for Sun and Lunala for Moon. With its newfound powers, we broke through a wormhole where Guzma had already wet himself and Lusamine perfected the fusion dance before battling me in a new demonic squid form. Eeyore led against a Clefable in Sun. Cross Poison got a 2-shot, while it used Metronome and pulled Boomerang, which doesn't work on flying types. Sully landed a Crunch Orco on the Miss Magius, while it went first with Plane Split for nothing more than mere chip damage. Beware still couldn't do anything other than Pain Split when appropriate, so Merida bashed away with Pluck while it helplessly tried to offload its suffering. Once in the red, she switched things up with Leaf Blade, of which she needed 3 of them and a dip into overgrow range to finish the Grizzly off properly. Eleanor's Flamethrower was a one-shot on the Lilligant, which confused her with Tina Dance to no avail. And Eeyore returned to fight the Milotic, with 2 uses of acrobatics flushing it away while it set up a useless safeguard. Moon had a simpler time. Link landed a Meaty Mash 2-shot on the Clefable, Crystal got the Crunch Orco on Miss Magius while taking minor damage from Pain Split, Wii Fit connected 2 Leaf Storm attacks on the Milotic with the second one landed a crit, Mother Brain also dealt a crit 2-shot, albeit on the Beware with Earth Power and while also taking damage from Pain Split, and Captain Falcon finished the deal with 2 Flame Charge attacks on the Lilligant despite getting paralyzed with Stun Spore. Once Lucamine's fusion was undone and she got taken to the nearest mental hospital, Nebby wanted to join my side for future adventures just like that. But I still don't play with legendaries, so I used the Master Ball to make it a caretaker in the box. Nanu was watching nearby and told me that the construction of the Pokemon League at Mount Lanakila was finished, so I felt excited to check it out firsthand. But before climbing up, Gladion wants to battle me for his last time as a token of thanks for our cooperation. Nemo led against Crobat and immediately summoned the School of Doom. He fought with Scald and it fought with Cross Poison, which poisoned him on the second attempt. I switched it to Eleanor to nerf its crit chance with her shell armor, while she sizzled it with a flamethrower. His type null evolved into a Silvally, holding a fire memory to counter Merida in particular. It fought with Crunch, while Eleanor continued to push with Dragon Pulse. Once in kill range, I tagged in Bullseye, who dodged a Crush Claw, held back a multi-attack, and dropped a Rock Tomb on him. He tried for a second one, but Lucario got swapped in, and the move missed anyway. In went Merida, nerfing Aurasphere on the switch in and knocking it out with 2 Spirit Shackle attacks. However, it was faster and went for a Metal Claw to Corkscrew Crash, making her too injured to continue. Bullseye went in for the Silvally again and held back another multi-attack, but Rock 2 missed. I I healed him while he held back 2 more multi-attacks, then finished it with Thrash. Finally, there was Weavile. Buzz was there to paralyze it with Thunder Wave while holding back a meaty Night Slash. Following this, the only play I could think of was to bring Nemo back to deflect Ice Shard, then use potions to keep his health up until it became fully paralyzed. And after a few potions, he got the leg group to hit it with a Scald, allowing Ellie to jump in on another fully paralyzed turn, then Twinkle tackle it for the finish. Moon sets Kirby out against the Crobat and fought with Revelation Dance, and during this time he survived 2 no-crit cross-poison attacks at 4 HP. Once the second dance brushed away that flying menace, he brought out a Silvally donning a grass memory. Crystal opted for 2 poison fang attacks and a crunch while it fought hard with X-Scissor. Samus held back a crit or sphere from the Lucario and steamrolled it with a single high horsepower attack. And finally, Link attacked a non-crit Night Slash from the Weavile and used Meteor Mash to turn it into ice cubes. With Gladion out of the way, it was time to climb up to the top of Mount Lanakila. This place was where Moon opted for one more capture, a Dramper, which got named Lip. And because this snowy mountain had an ice rock here, Ice Climber got dragged along and evolved into a Glaceon via level up. This mountain also is home to the Iceon Z, one of 4 optional Z crystals and what I felt to be a useful asset for the final battles. But right before the league entrance, we still had to fight Hal for one final time and to show each other what we learned from our Alolan Island tour. Sun led with Meridia against his Raichu. She held back a hefty sidekick, while a crit Spirit Shackle hit it so hard that the last stretch of daylight magically went below the horizon. Nemo and his buddies ran through the Flareon with 2 Scald attacks, only holding back a softened Flare Blitz. Bullseye's Flash with the 2 shots on the Kamala, which landed a beefy Wood Hammer in return. And his almost treacherous Primarina faced a light screen and Thunder Wave from Buzz, which protected so well that 2 Moonblast attacks brought him down to 2 HP. After 1 discharge, Meridia went in to tank another Moonblast into red HP, then dispatched the rest of his health with Leaf Blade. Why did I play so risky? And then there's Moon. Crystal tanked a Thunderbolt from the Raichu and got the Crunch 1-shot on it. Lip made her debut against the Kamala, but she could only do 1 Dragon Pulse before being brought into kill range. Kirby went in to negate its second Earthquake and held back a harsh Sucker Punch before landing a Revelation Dance. With him also in kill range, I tagged in Zelda, who held back a Shadow Claw on the Switch and brushed it away with Acrobatics. Lucas returned for the Incineroar and ran a Sparkling Aria 2-shot while holding back a beefy Earthquake. And Zeke held back a Leaf Blade attack from the Leafeon while pushing with 2 Meteor Mash attacks, the first one getting the attack boost and the second one landing a crit! With no major obstacles remaining, it was time to do some preparation work for the Pokemon League itself. Sun kept the team as it was after How, but opted trade for missing crucial EVs needed for these battles, with attack EVs gained from almost everything at Paniola Ranch, and special attack EVs from the Magnemite over at the trainer school. Moon retired Zelda here and brought Ice Climber in to fill the spot. She had proved that the Bounce Sweet line is crazy lethal here, and one that I'll be more excited to use in later legs. The EV grind was almost the same, but when Ice Climber was pumped full of special attack EVs, I also let him go after Wild Bounce Sweets back at Lush Jungle for HP EVs. I grabbed the rare candies that I would need, the TMs for moves that I would need, the varying types of nectar for Kirby that I need, and searched around for any helpful held items for the long run. Since Kukui was getting serious as a researcher for move combination, I felt it was wise to put similar knowledge together for my plight through the Elite Four. Just like at Unova and Kalos, they could get challenged in any order, and no team were in the same room at the same time. So let's start with Hala, Moon's first opponent, but Sun's third. Sun broke away from the default item loadouts, giving the 5 EMZ to Eleanor, the Expert Belt to Ellie, and the Scope Lens to Buzz. Even then, Sun still had a bumpy ride. Hariyama's knockoff pushed Merida straight into Overgrow range, and even without the Miracle Seed, she had the power to nail that Leaf Blade 2 shots. Eleanor stepped in for the Crabominable. She took a Ice Hammer well, then dispatched it with a single Infernal Overdrive. I brought Nemo in for the Primeape. His defenses held back a Cross Chop at only half health, then he ran 3 Aqua Tails on it with the Shell Bell helping with some healing. Ellie's Dazzling Gleam was an Orc on the Beware, and likewise for Buzz's Wild Charge on the Poliwrath. Kirby opened for Moon, holding back a Fake Out from the Hariyama and going in with 2 Air Slash attacks while holding back a Close Combat. Then out came the Crabominable, which Lucas ran a crit Twinkle tackle like a boss. From there, none of his team could do anything. His Primeape tried with the Cross Chop, and Poliwrath was tanky enough to use submission, but Moonblast was powerful enough to OHKO the Primeape and Beware, as well as force Hala to use his potion stock on the Poliwrath before that went down too. Sun's actual first fighter, Flying-type trainer Kahuna, was strangely Moon's last opponent. And for that one, Crystal received the Poison Barb and Link grabbed the Steelium Z. Sun sends Buzz out against her leading Skarmory, but despite having max attack EVs, Fire Punch wasn't even a 2-shot, so he held back a couple of slashes while he laid down 5 hits and Kahuna used a Performance Restore. What about the other available move? Spikes! That's difficult for anyone switching in. Bullseye fought against the Oricorio and got hit from a Tina Dance, but broke through the confusion to Oko with Rock Slide. Mandy Buzz was the problem. Ellie's Ice Beam was set to be an easy 2-shot, but Flatter got in the way and she ended up in kill range thanks to Brave Bird. So I brought in Nemo for help and he connected an Aqua Tail for the knockout. Then there was that ridiculous skill Link 2 cannon with Beak Blast. It indeed charged up with that move on the first turn, but I had Buzz, and he went straight through it with a Gigavolt Havoc before it could even fire back. Bullseye returned for the Crobat, dodged 2 uses of Supersonic, and handled it with a Rock Slide 2-shot. Moon had a more stressful fight. Kirby's Revelation Dance kept triggering Skarmory's Sturdy ability, and he brought it down after 2 potion heals and no spikes on the floor this time. Oricorio straightaway tried to lower Lucas's physical attack with Feather Dance, which meant nothing as Sparkling Aria's a special move and got the 1-shot. He stayed to Moonblast the Mandibuzz, but that thing was surprisingly tanky even with Brave Bird recoil. I expected a second potion, but no! Kahuna switched in Crobat to tank another Moonblast. Link got brought in to block Poison Fang, but it landed Supersonic instead. And then tried Ice Climber, who held back 2 Air Slash attacks, and the second one flinched him. Then I tried Kirby. He held back an Air Slash and a Swift, and then managed the knockout with Revelation Dance. Back to the Mandibuzz again. Lucas returned, and despite getting confused through Flatter, he landed a decisive Moonblast needed to take it out. Link went up against the 2 cannon, which he screeched like an idiot, but that got deflected thanks to Clear Body. And that thing got met with a Corkscrew Crash Oko. Moon's second in line and Sun's third was Acerola. Sun briefly changed up items here, giving the Icium Z to Ellie and the Expert Belt to Buzz, while Moon opted for a bigger change with the Ghostium Z to Lip, the Mystic Water to Lucas, and Kirby taking on some Red Nectar for a 1-match-only fight in the Battle-style form. Bullseye stepped up for the first 2 fights against the Sableye and Frostlass. The former hit a Fake Out in the first turn and then a Confuser in the second, but going from Smart Strike to Rock Slide to Smart Strike again was no issue. Frostlass missed Blizzard on the first turn, but hit for a ridiculous amount of damage on the second, and thankfully it fell to 2 Smart Strike attacks. Eleanor went in against the Delmise. Her Flamethrower kept pushing it into Potion Heal range, and after 2 full restores, the third Flamethrower landed a crit! All this, and she held back a single Shadow Ball. Ellie went out for the Palossand and Drifblim. The former faced a Sub-Zero Slammer Oko, while the second fell to 2 uses of Ice Beam after an attempted Focus Energy setup. In Moon, Lucas held back a Fake Out and Confuser against the Sableye, but broke through the confusion to 1-shot with Moonblast. Kirby went against the Delmise in his hot new form, held back a Shadow Ball and pushed for a Revelation Dance 2-shot. Crystal tanked the Blizzard from the Frostlass, and then ran straight through it with a Crunch Oko. Palossand landed a beefy Earth Power against Lip, who I gotta admit isn't really a special tank at all, but that was fine because it got met with a never-ending nightmare. It was also scary for Crystal to go up against the Drifblim, but it just set her with Amnesia and Focus Energy, leaving Aftermath to remove some health after a Crunch 2 HKO. And then there's the Stonewall that was Olivia, Moon's second opponent, but Sun's fourth. Sun changed the item loadout back to what it was at the beginning, but Buzz got the Expert Belt, Eleanor received the Shell Bell, and Nemo got the Waterium Z. And Moon really gave the Primarium Z to Lucas. Sun led with Merida against Relicanth. It tried to put her to sleep with Yawn, but Leaf Blade landed a Yoko and she was safe to switch out. Nemo went against the Lycanroc. Yes, it was faster and went for a Continental Crush, which he tanked beautifully. And then he hit back for the Oko Hydro Vortex. Buzz outsped the Golem no problem, so a flinch from Steamroller was never going to be an issue. He ran 3 Brick Breaks on that thing. Merida went back out against the Pummel Pass, which paralyzed her with Thunder Wave, hit her with Power Gem, and set up a Sandstorm. Despite this, she broke through the paralysis and used 3 more Leaf Blade attacks to bring it down. And then there was the beefy Carbink. Bullseye Smart Strike went through the Sandstorm to handle it in 2 turns, rendering its Reflex setup useless. In Moon, her Relicanth had the habit of spamming Yawn on anything I switched into, so it was a matter of who between Link and Lucas was going to get the knockouts. The former opened with a Hammer Arm, while the latter finished with a Sparkling Aria. That brought out the Golem, which meant bringing Link back in. It attacked with Thunder Punch, and the first one even landed Paralysis! Amazingly, Link broke through it to keep spamming Bulldoze, but he didn't have enough power to make it a 2-shot. She used up all of her potion stock here, which gave me time to use a Paralyze heal on one turn and a Hyper Potion on another. But Link got through with more Bulldoze use and got out of that mess. Next was that specially bulky Probo Pass, but despite this, Lucas's Sparkling Aria nailed a 2-shot on it, and he even dodged a Thunder Wave like a mad lad. But Lanakila outsped Lucas and went with a Stone Edge for some reason, which gave him time to land an Oceanic Operator Oko. And then, Link did the same to Carbink with Meteor Mash. One fight remaining, and that was the not champion, Professor Kukui himself, local researcher and the founder of the Pokemon League here in Alola. With the rare candies in my bag, everyone reached the same level as his aces Incineroar in Sun and Decidueye in Moon. Sun also had no item changes since Olivia, while Moon made a slight modification since Kahili and gave the Titanium Z to Link. The battle started. Meriday continued to lead for Sun and went against Lycanroc. It set up with Stealth Rock, but Leaf Blade was a clean Oko. Braviary was up next, and it set up a Tailwind while Buzz knocked it out with a ridiculous wild charge that took half of his health down. Snorlax was up next, and his ridiculous move coverage meant somebody would fall to this thing. I decided that Buzz had done his job, so I let him run one last Big Break to get it to half health, and high horsepower missed! So I guess a Big Break 2-shot worked out. Nemo went against the Incineroar, held back a Darkest Lariat, then knocked it out with a Hydro Vortex. Next was the Magnezone, and since Buzz was miraculously still alive, he also pushed it down with 2 Brick Break attacks. The last one standing was his Ninetales. Eleanor was set to go out in a blaze of glory, so Explosion was clicked, but it didn't kill. Well, Kukui went on to Potion Heal, while Bullseye stepped in to take it out completely with a Smart Strike. Not the fireworks I wanted, but it worked out all the same. Lycanroc also did a Stealth Rock setup in Moon and got smashed with an Oko, albeit with a Sparkling Eye from Lucas this time. Next was Magnezone, which Link was out for. He ran an opening Bulldoze, but it paralyzed with Thunder Wave, then Kukui switched it to Decidueye, which took a Bulldoze like nothing. In retaliation, I switched it to Crystal, who got locked into position with Spirit Shackle, a case of kill or be killed. She did her best with Crunch, and yet it knocked itself out with Brave Bird Recoil. Then there was the dreaded Snorlax with its ridiculous move coverage. I was praying on a miracle for Link to break through the paralysis, and the miracle happened, as did the all-out pummeling Oko. Link stayed in for the Magnezone, held back a painful Thunderbolt, and broke through the paralysis for a second time to KO with Bulldoze. In went the Braviary, and so did Kirby, taking some horrible damage from Stealth Rock on entry. Despite that, it merely set with Tailwind, given the chance to deal a Revelation Dance Oko. And finally, Ninetales. I opted for Lucas, and he tanked his defense with Dazzling Gleam, and crazily got a crit with Sparkling Aria, forcing Kukui to use his last potion. He held back one more Dazzling Gleam, then removes that Icy Needle with 2 uses of Sparkling Aria, securing victory. And just like that, Nuzlocke got completed in Sun and Moon. The use of Z moves meant I had to be way more careful going in, and I was surprised that Moon went for the entire thing with one member of the roster unable to do anything significant. If those 2 games put me through my paces, then I had to be even more mindful with the next 2 legs in the Remix adventure. Yep, we're staying in Alola for a little while longer. I'll catch you next time when I take on Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so subscribe to see the next video as it goes live. For now, Rixie out. Thanks for watching, and if you see a jellyfish, run. No explanation needed.